Hey everyone, I have some photos of people that were their last, and majority of them have a backstory that is pretty chilling in my opinion. So, let's just walk and I'll start with the first one. Andrei Emelianov, an 18-year-old student at the Western Complex of Continuous Education in Moscow, Russia. Andrei was far from a typical student. The vocational school was designed for those who had trouble adjusting to regular educational settings, often due to behavioral issues, and Andrei fit this profile. Having been transferred there after chronic absenteeism at his previous school, he didn't care much for his studies. Instead, he was drawn to video games, where he found solace and friendship in online gaming communities. Here, his virtual friends knew him as an ordinary, good-humored guy, someone who seemed normal, at least on the surface. But Andrei's interests weren't limited to harmless gaming. He was particularly captivated by the character Walter Sullivan from Silent Hill 4, a villain infamous for killing his victims before taking his own life. This morbid fascination hinted at a deeper, more disturbing side to Andrei that most around him failed to see. His frustrations mounted in 2017, particularly with one of his teachers, Sergei Danilov. A former military officer, Danilov taught health and safety with a firm hand, which only intensified the strained relationship between him and Andrei. Danilov's strictness, combined with Andrei's rebellious behavior, led to escalating tensions, with Danilov even considering expelling Andrei from the school. Andrei often joked with his online friends about killing Danilov, but no one took these remarks seriously. They were dismissed as the kind of dark humor typical of internet culture. However, there were signs that something more sinister was coming. Andrei began ending his messages with the cryptic hashtag 11117, which seemed strange at the time, but would later reveal its chilling meaning. On November 1st, 2017, Andrei arrived at school with a deadly plan. At some point during the day, he entered Danilov's empty classroom, carrying a knife. Without warning, Andrei attacked Danilov from behind, stabbing him in the neck and killing him. After the murder, Andrei took two disturbing selfies, one with Danilov's body and another holding a power saw from the school's workshop, which he would later use to end his own life. In one of these haunting photos, Andrei stares blankly into the camera, a toothpick in his mouth, his face devoid of emotion. He posted the image online, accompanied by a song from the band November's Doom. Authorities investigating the case later found links between Andrei and an online death group known for encouraging violent acts and self-harm, though the exact extent of his involvement remains unclear. The school was left in shock, mourning the loss of Sergei Danilov, a man remembered by colleagues and students as a tough but fair teacher. Pavel Kashin was a highly skilled Russian parkour expert, known for his daring and gravity-defying stunts. In this photo, taken on the rooftop of a 16-story building in his hometown of St. Petersburg, Pavel is captured midair, attempting a backflip. Sadly, this would be his final stunt. Moments after the photograph was taken, Pavel lost his balance and tragically fell to his death. His friend, who was filming him at the time, captured this poignant image. Semra Aysal's story is a devastating account of betrayal and premeditated murder. In June 2018, the 32-year-old woman, 7 months pregnant at the time, was vacationing with her husband, Hakan Aysal, at Butterfly Valley, a picturesque spot in Muğla, southern Turkey. What should have been a peaceful getaway turned into a horrifying tragedy when Hakan pushed Semra off the edge of a 1,000-foot cliff after they took a selfie together. The murder was carefully planned. Prosecutors later revealed that Hakan had taken out a life insurance policy on Semra worth 400,000 Turkish lira, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. He spent 3 hours with her near the cliff's edge, waiting until they were alone to commit the crime. Afterward, Hakan attempted to collect on the life insurance policy, but his claim was rejected as authorities began investigating the suspicious circumstances of her death. A key piece of evidence came from Rizal Sahin, a witness who had been at the scene that day. He captured video footage of the couple walking near the cliff and had made a remark to his friend, joking that one of them might fall. Sahin's testimony, along with that of another witness who observed how unnervingly calm Hakan was after Semra's fall, fueled the suspicion that her death was no accident. Semra's family played a critical role in the trial. Her brother, Naim Yokku, testified that Semra had a deep fear of heights, making it unlikely she would have gone near the cliff's edge voluntarily. He also revealed that after her death, Hakan had taken out loans in her name, even though Semra had been firmly against such financial decisions. This further cast doubt on Hakan's intentions. Despite Hakan's claim that Semra fell accidentally while trying to retrieve her phone, the evidence painted a much darker picture. Testimonies from witnesses, CCTV footage, and forensic analysis all pointed to murder. Hakan's defense of mental instability was thoroughly discredited by medical experts, and he was ultimately sentenced to at least 30 years in prison for the deliberate and premeditated killing of his pregnant wife. This unsettling image captures Ricardo Lopez in the final moments before his death. Lopez, infamously known as the Bjork Stalker, was a Uruguayan-American whose unhealthy fixation on Icelandic singer Bjork spiraled into a dangerous obsession. He devised a sinister plan to send her a letter bomb, intending to harm the singer. The package made it as far as London, but was intercepted by authorities just in time. After the failed attempt, Lopez was discovered dead following a disturbing suicide ritual where he had shaved his head and painted his face. Alongside his body, police uncovered a video diary in which Lopez detailed his dark, delusional reasoning behind the attack. The story of Ladies' Code is one of the most tragic in K-pop history, a tale of rising stars whose journey was cut short by a devastating accident. Formed in 2012, the group consisted of 5 members: Ashley, Sojung, Zuni, Yoonbi, and Rice. While they hadn't yet reached the global fame of other K-pop acts, Ladies' Code was steadily building a strong fan base with their catchy songs and unique style. The bond between the members was especially close, with best friends and roommates Yoonbi and Rice describing their connection as more than friendship, a sisterhood that transcended the stage. Their promising career, however, would come to a heartbreaking end on September 3, 2014. After performing at an event in Daegu, South Korea, the group was traveling back to Seoul in a van driven by their road manager, Mr. Park. The night was rainy, and the roads were treacherous. Despite the conditions, Mr. Park was speeding at 85 miles per hour in a 60 miles per hour zone. At approximately 1:30 a.m., the van hydroplaned on the slick surface of the Yeongdong Expressway, skidding out of control before crashing into a guardrail and rolling several times. The crash had catastrophic consequences. Yoonbi, Rice, and Sojung were severely injured, while Ashley, Zuni, and their stylist escaped with minor injuries. Tragically, Yoonbi died shortly after arriving at the hospital. Rice, who had sustained critical head injuries, underwent emergency brain surgery, but despite the efforts of medical professionals, she passed away 4 days later, on September 7th. Sojung survived but was left with both physical injuries and deep emotional scars. The investigation into the accident revealed that reckless driving was the primary cause. Initially, Mr. Park claimed that a wheel had come loose, leading to the van's loss of control. However, experts determined that the wheel only detached after the vehicle had already begun to crash. As a result, Park received a suspended sentence of 1 year and 2 months, along with mandatory driving education. The families of Yoonbi and Rice eventually reached an out-of-court settlement with him. In the aftermath, they held a tribute concert in Japan, fulfilling Rice's dream of performing in Yokohama, a goal she never had the chance to realize. Despite their efforts to continue, the emotional toll of the tragedy was overwhelming. By 2020, with their contracts with Polaris Entertainment having expired, the surviving members decided to step back from the public eye, placing Ladies' Code on an indefinite hiatus. Though Yoonbi and Rice are no longer with us, their legacy lives on through the music they created and the impact they had on their fans. This photo shows 2 best friends, Cheyenne Rose Antoine and Brittany Gargole, getting ready for a night out. But it's far more than just a casual snapshot. It would later become a critical piece of evidence in a shocking crime. Cheyenne, pictured on the left, would eventually strangle Brittany using the very same belt she was wearing in this image. The 2 friends reportedly got into a heated argument after consuming drugs and alcohol, and in a moment of rage, Cheyenne used the belt to kill Brittany. For 2 years, Cheyenne kept her terrible secret, It wasn't until this photograph, showing her wearing the murder weapon, helped investigators piece together the crime that she finally confessed. The disappearance of 3-year-old William Tyrell remains one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries in Australia. On September 11, 2014, William, dressed in his beloved Spider-Man costume, traveled with his foster family from Sydney to the small town of Kendall on the north coast of New South Wales. They were visiting his foster grandmother, whose house was near the edge of the Kendall State Forest. William, always full of energy, was playing hide-and-seek with his older sister in the yard, while his foster mother and grandmother watched over them. At some point between 10 and 10:30 a.m., William's foster mother stepped inside briefly to prepare a drink. When she noticed that the usual sounds of William's laughter had suddenly stopped, she became alarmed. Rushing outside, she found no trace of William. After a frantic search around the house and yard, she called emergency services. Police arrived by 11:06 a.m., launching what would become a massive search operation. The last memory William's foster mother has of him is hearing him roar like a tiger as he ran toward the side of the house. Then he vanished. Despite the immediate and intense search efforts involving hundreds of volunteers, emergency personnel, and specialized police teams such as Strike Force Roseanne, no clues were uncovered in those first critical days. Canine units also combed the area, but even they were unable to pick up any significant trail. Attention soon turned to 2 suspicious vehicles spotted in the neighborhood just before William went missing. His foster mother had noticed the cars, which seemed out of place in the close-knit community. One of the cars, described as a green or gray sedan, was seen driving past the Tyrell home before making a U-turn and speeding away. Later, the same vehicle was reportedly seen driving quickly down a nearby road. These cars became a focal point in the investigation, but despite extensive efforts, neither vehicle nor its occupants were ever identified. As investigators ruled out the family's involvement, suspicion grew that William may have been abducted by a predator. At the time of his disappearance, approximately 20 registered sex offenders lived in the area, prompting authorities to explore the possibility of a connection to a pedophile ring. However, despite interviewing over 600 persons of interest and pursuing numerous leads, no arrests have been made. Many suspects were questioned, but all denied any involvement in William's disappearance. In a desperate attempt to find new information, a reward of $1 million, the largest ever offered for a missing person in New South Wales, was announced on September 12, 2016. Authorities hoped that the substantial reward would lead to fresh clues, but even this failed to break the case open. As time passes, investigators continue to search for answers, holding on to the hope that William may still be alive. David Johnston was a highly skilled American volcanologist, admired for his expertise in volcanic gases and their relationship to eruptions. In May 1980, Johnston was stationed at an observation post located 6 miles from Mount St. Helens, an active stratovolcano in Skamania County, Washington. The photograph of him was taken just hours before disaster struck. On May 18, 1980, only 13 hours later, the volcano erupted in a massive explosion that claimed 57 lives, including Johnston's. Johnston was the first to relay the eruption, sending out a transmission that famously stated, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." Moments later, he was engulfed by the deadly blast. Despite extensive search efforts, his body was never recovered. Agnes Akom, a 20-year-old Hungarian woman, had been living in the UK for 5 years, with hopes of building a better future. Known by her friends as Dora, she worked as a coffin maker and resided in Cricklewood, London. Her life took a tragic turn when she vanished on May 9, 2021. That morning, she left her home to go to work, but when her partner couldn't reach her and noticed her sudden absence from social media, he became alarmed and reported her missing 2 days later on May 11th. As the police launched an investigation, CCTV footage captured Agnes on the day of her disappearance, dressed in a white faux fur coat, a white t-shirt, blue ripped jeans, and white trainers. Her last known movements were traced to a vehicle belonging to 63-year-old Nicholas Pitzen, a man she had been in regular contact with. On May 18th, police arrested Pitzen in connection with her disappearance on suspicion of murder and false imprisonment. Pitzen, a North Acton resident living in a large shipping container, initially denied any involvement. However, surveillance footage showed Agnes entering the container on May 9th, but no footage ever showed her leaving. During his police interview, Pitzen admitted that Agnes had come to his container but claimed he had dropped her off at a cash point afterward. Investigators found this story inconsistent with the evidence, and their suspicions grew. CCTV footage from the days following Agnes's disappearance showed Pitzen moving items from his container to his car and visiting a skip near Niston Recreation Ground. It was here that officers later found Agnes's white coat. Forensic analysis of the container revealed traces of blood matching Agnes's DNA, further implicating Pitzen. Additional blood was discovered in his car. Despite the mounting evidence, Pitzen continued to deny his involvement. On May 23, 2021, with no body yet discovered, Pitzen was officially charged with Agnes's murder. The investigation, however, continued as police searched for her remains. After 36 days of searching, on June 14, 2021, police dogs uncovered human remains beneath a tree covered by logs and branches. The remains were confirmed to be Agnes, and a post-mortem examination revealed that she had suffered brutal blunt force trauma, having been struck at least 20 times. On August 16, 1977, Robert Cole and his 4-year-old daughter stood outside Elvis Presley's Graceland mansion, hoping for a brief encounter with the legendary singer as he returned home. At around 12:38 a.m., Elvis, accompanied by his girlfriend, drove through the gates and waved to the little girl. Cole seized that moment to capture a photograph of the star. Tragically, just hours later, Elvis was discovered unresponsive in the bathroom of his Graceland home by his girlfriend, Ginger Alden. Despite efforts to revive him, he was pronounced dead at Baptist Memorial Hospital later that afternoon at 3:30 p.m. He was just 42 years old. The Concorde, once the crown jewel of luxury air travel and a marvel of aviation technology, saw its legacy forever tarnished by a catastrophic event that no one could have foreseen. This supersonic passenger plane, renowned for its extraordinary speed and safety, made its first transatlantic flight on September 26, 1973. It seemed almost invincible, a masterpiece of engineering that defied the limitations of commercial aviation. That illusion of invincibility shattered on July 25, 2000. Air France Flight 4590 was set to fly from Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris to New York City, carrying 100 passengers and 9 crew members. As the aircraft sped down the runway, disaster struck. A piece of debris, left behind by another plane, punctured one of the Concorde's tires. The resulting tire blowout sent fragments flying into the underside of the wing, causing catastrophic damage. A punctured fuel tank ignited a fire that quickly spread, engulfing one of the engines in flames. Despite the crew's efforts, the plane struggled to gain altitude. Just 2 minutes after takeoff, Concorde plunged into a hotel in the nearby town of Agnes, France. The devastating crash claimed the lives of all 109 people on board, as well as 4 people on the ground. The fiery aftermath, captured in haunting photographs, depicted the smoldering wreckage of a plane once synonymous with safety and grandeur. The world was stunned, not only by the tragic loss of life, but by the fact that it was Concorde, the plane thought to be impervious to disaster, that had met such a fate. Though this was the only fatal incident in Concorde's operational history, it proved to be a fatal blow to its reputation. Just 3 years later, in 2003, Concorde was retired, bringing an abrupt close to an era of supersonic passenger travel. Victor Barrio, a 29-year-old Spanish bullfighter, tragically met his end during a bullfight on July 9, 2016. While facing a 529-kilogram bull, the animal's horn tragically pierced through Barrio's chest. The incident, which was witnessed by a live audience and broadcast on television, left spectators in shock. Horrific photos from the event captured the exact moment, showing the anguish on Barrio's face as the bull's horn struck. Nicholas Mevoli was a passionate freediver, dedicated to mastering one of the most extreme sports on the planet. Freediving pushes the boundaries of human endurance by challenging divers to descend deep into the ocean, on a single breath, without the aid of breathing apparatus. Nicholas became obsessed with this dangerous pursuit, training relentlessly in bathtubs, pools, and even running while holding his breath, all in the quest to push his limits. His hard work and devotion led him to become a national record holder. On November 17, 2013, during an international competition in the Bahamas, Nicholas attempted a demanding dive in the constant weight no fins (CNF) category, aiming to reach a depth of 72 meters, 236 feet. This type of dive is notorious for its difficulty, as it requires divers to descend and ascend without any fins, relying solely on their own strength and lung capacity. Nicholas began his dive with confidence, plunging into the ocean's dark depths. At 68 meters, 223 feet, he hesitated for a brief moment, turning back toward the surface, only to change his mind and push himself further into the abyss. After an astonishing 3 minutes and 38 seconds underwater, Nicholas resurfaced. The last known photograph of him alive was taken moments after this resurfacing. He appeared to have made it, initially looking calm and in control. However, the triumph was short-lived. Suddenly, Nicholas collapsed backward, losing consciousness. He was rushed to the Vid Sims Memorial Health Center, where doctors diagnosed him with pulmonary edema, a condition where fluid builds up in the lungs. This is often caused by the intense pressure changes experienced during deep dives. Despite their efforts, Nicholas Mevoli did not survive, becoming the first athlete to die in an international free diving competition. This seemingly ordinary photo captures a couple posing in front of Niagara Falls, but the image holds a tragic story in the background. Behind the couple, a woman dressed in red can be seen. Her name was Ayano Tokumasu. Shortly after this picture was taken, Tokumasu, in an attempt to get a better view of the iconic falls, climbed over the protective railing. Unfortunately, as she stood up, she lost her balance and fell into the river below. Swept away by the powerful current, the incident ended in tragedy, forever linking this innocent snapshot to an unforeseen disaster. On August 31, 2024, Fabio Cioni, a dedicated family man, proudly shared a photo of his wife and 2 sons on social media, marking a joyful moment of celebration. It was his 51st birthday, and the family, living in Paderno Dugnano near Milan, northern Italy, had spent the day together in happiness. As they went to bed that evening, they had no inkling of the horror that was about to unfold within their home. At approximately 2 a.m., the peaceful household was torn apart by an unimaginable act of violence. Fabio's younger son, just 12 years old, was the first to be attacked while he lay in bed. He was repeatedly stabbed in a vicious assault. His screams of agony awoke the family, and Fabio rushed to his aid. Tragically, in his attempt to save his son, he too was brutally stabbed in the neck and throat. Moments later, Fabio's wife, who had also rushed to the scene, suffered the same horrifying fate. All 3 died almost instantly from the ferocity of the attack. The family's older son, a 17-year-old, made a frantic call to the police in the midst of the chaos. In the initial call, he claimed to have killed his father in self-defense, saying that his father had attacked his mother and brother. However, when law enforcement arrived at the scene, they were met with a shocking twist. This teenager admitted to having killed his entire family. His sudden confession left both the police and the local community in disbelief, as no one had suspected any serious issues within the family that could have foreshadowed such a horrific event. In the aftermath, investigators began probing the 17-year-old's life, hoping to uncover a reason for his shocking actions. They searched through his social media, his personal history, and his mental health background, but found no concrete explanation. The boy expressed feelings of isolation and a sense of detachment from his surroundings, yet these emotions seemed too vague and disconnected to justify such a brutal crime. There were no significant signs of conflict or deep-rooted issues within the family that could have hinted at this tragic outcome. The case is still under investigation, with the 17-year-old in custody, facing charges of murder with aggravating factors, including premeditation. Gary Slock and his mother, Petra, were among the passengers on board Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, which tragically ended in disaster. This photo, taken just before their flight took off from Amsterdam in June 2014, captures a poignant moment as they embarked on a vacation to the South Pacific. A few hours later, their plane was shot down over eastern Ukraine while flying over a conflict zone. All 298 people on board, including Gary and Petra, perished in the crash. On May 11, 2011, a seemingly normal day began for 6-year-old Timmothy Pitzen, who was dropped off at Greenman Elementary School in Aurora, Illinois, by his father, James Pitzen. His mother, Amy Pitzen, arrived shortly afterward, unexpectedly checking him out of class, claiming a family emergency. That decision triggered a series of bizarre and tragic events that would leave a haunting mystery in its wake. Amy and Timothy spent the next 2 days visiting various locations, beginning with a stop at a repair shop where Amy left her car. While it was being serviced, an employee drove them to the Brookfield Zoo, where they spent the afternoon. From there, they traveled to the Key Lime Cove Resort in Gurnee, Illinois, for an overnight stay. On May 12th, they headed to the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin, another vacation destination. Security footage captured them checking out the next morning. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Timothy. That same day, Amy called several family members, reassuring them that both she and Timothy were fine. Her calls were traced to an area near Route 40, northwest of Sterling, Illinois. Timothy's voice was faintly heard in the background, mentioning that he was hungry. Oddly, Amy never contacted James, who had already begun desperately searching for his missing son. Later on May 13th, Amy appeared alone at a Family Dollar store in Winnebago, Illinois, purchasing a notebook, pen, and envelopes. 30 minutes later, she was seen at a grocery store, still by herself. That evening, she checked into the Rockford Inn. It was here that the tragedy took its darkest turn. Sometime that night or the following morning, Amy took her own life, slashing her wrists and neck and overdosing on antihistamines. Her body was discovered by a maid, but Timothy was nowhere to be found. In the hotel room, investigators found a suicide note from Amy. It included an eerie message. She apologized for the mess and stated that Timothy was safe but would never be found. Photographs of Timothy were laid out on the bed, but no other clues pointed to his whereabouts. Despite thorough investigations, no signs have ever surfaced to suggest Timothy was in the hotel with her, nor has any trace of him been found since. Family members acknowledged that Amy had been struggling with mental health issues, and her relationship with James had been troubled. However, they insisted that she deeply loved Timothy. This makes the case all the more perplexing. Did Amy truly ensure her son's safety before her suicide, or did something far more sinister happen during those final days? Adding another layer of mystery, the clothing Amy wore when she checked into the Rockford Inn was never found. Some have speculated that she may have changed after harming Timothy, but no hard evidence supports this theory. Whether Timothy is still alive remains unknown, but the fact that he has never made contact with his family leaves many to suspect the worst. If Timothy were alive today, he would be 19 years old. His disappearance remains one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries, especially given the unsettling last photos of him from the Wisconsin resort. This photo shows Thomas Bart Whittaker on the left and his younger brother Kevin on the right, taken just hours before Thomas planned to have his family killed. The two brothers were casually joking around while their mother decided to capture the moment. Later, they went out for dinner, supposedly to celebrate Thomas completing his exams, a story that turned out to be a lie. While they were at the restaurant, Thomas had arranged for a friend to enter their home, retrieve a gun, and stage a burglary. The friend waited for the family's return. When Thomas's family came back, his friend shot his mother and brother. His father, however, survived the attack. The photo shows Kevin smiling, completely unaware that his older brother was planning his murder. Gail Matson, a 79-year-old woman from Minnesota, had always been the kind of person who embraced life with a passion. Her spirit of adventure had taken her many places, but in March 2024, she embarked on what she called her last big adventure, a safari through Zambia's Kafue National Park. This journey had been a dream for Gail, a chance to immerse herself in the heart of Africa's untamed wilderness. The trip was a culmination of her lifelong love for nature and wildlife, a final grand experience she had looked forward to for years. On that fateful day, Gail joined 5 other tourists for a game drive across the vast sun-soaked expanses of the park. They were seated in an open-top safari vehicle. Kafue National Park, with its sprawling landscapes and rich biodiversity, offered a glimpse into nature at its rawest. It should have been an unforgettable day filled with awe, but as the group moved deeper into the park, the unexpected happened. A massive bull elephant appeared in their path. Though safaris like this one are typically safe, the wildness of Africa's creatures is never fully predictable. In a sudden, terrifying turn, the elephant charged at the vehicle. Bull elephants, especially in times of distress or agitation, can become dangerously aggressive. The group watched in frozen horror as the animal closed in. Without warning, the elephant collided with their truck, its powerful body tipping the vehicle with a bone-rattling force. In the chaos that followed, Gail was tragically killed on impact. The force of the elephant's charge was too much, and she did not survive the attack. One of her fellow travelers sustained severe injuries and was quickly rushed to the nearest hospital, while the other 4 passengers escaped with minor wounds. The dreamlike excitement of the day shattered in an instant, turning into an unimaginable nightmare for everyone on that trip. Millions of people go on safaris each year, drawn by the allure of adventure and the chance to witness nature up close. While it's a rare occurrence for an elephant to attack a vehicle, incidents like these remind us that no matter how organized or well-prepared an experience might be, nature remains unpredictable. For all its beauty, the wild also carries an element of danger that cannot be entirely controlled. Gail's family and friends were left reeling from the tragedy. What was supposed to be the fulfillment of her dream had turned into their worst nightmare. On November 14, 2017, Sydney Loofe agreed to a first date with Bailey Boswell, who was using the alias Audrey on Tinder. The following day, Sydney went on another date with Boswell, and before leaving, posted a photo of herself with the caption, "When Sydney failed to show up for work the next day, she was reported missing." Tragically, after 3 weeks of searching, her dismembered remains were discovered along a gravel road 60 miles from where she had gone on the date. Bailey Boswell and her partner, Aubrey Trail, were later convicted of Sydney's murder. Boswell was sentenced to life in prison, while Trail received the death penalty. One explanation Trail gave was that he and Boswell were part of a lifestyle involving the recruitment of women for what he described as a cult-like group that engaged in criminal and sadistic activities, including trafficking and witchcraft rituals. However, it's believed much of this was a constructed fantasy to control and manipulate others. In the end, it seemed that Trail and Boswell intended to use Sydney Loofe as a victim in a broader scheme involving violence and sadistic pleasure. Trail claimed her death was accidental during sexual fantasy, but prosecutors argued that Sydney was selected, lured, and killed as part of a deliberate and heinous plan. Molly LaRue and Geoff Hood were a young couple full of dreams and a love for adventure. Their journey along the Appalachian Trail in 1990 was meant to be a transformative experience, one that would bring them closer to nature and to each other. Both in their mid-20s, they had met in Kansas at a church-sponsored program for vulnerable youth, where their shared compassion and zest for life brought them together. After losing their jobs, they decided to embark on the ambitious challenge of hiking the nearly 2,200-mile Appalachian Trail, starting from Mount Katahdin in Maine and working their way south. To fellow hikers, Molly and Geoff were known by their trail names, Molly as Nalgene and Geoff as Clevis. They were well-liked on the trail, with their cheerful personalities and kindness making them a welcome presence wherever they stopped. They captured memories with their camera, documenting their adventure with bright smiles and enthusiasm, but no one could have known that one of those joyful snapshots would be their last. By September 11, 1990, the couple had reached Duncannon, Pennsylvania, a significant stop along their long journey. They spent a night at the Trailside Doyle Hotel, a place where many weary hikers took refuge after months of camping in the wilderness. Refreshed, Molly and Geoff resumed their hike the next day, heading toward the Thelma Marks Shelter on Cove Mountain, a simple lean-to structure offering little more than a roof for the night. It seemed like just another night on their incredible journey, but it would soon turn into something far more horrifying. In the early hours of September 13th, 1990, as Molly and Geoff slept, they were violently attacked. A stranger crept upon the couple in their sleep. Geoff was shot 3 times with a .22 caliber pistol, suffering fatal wounds to his head, back, and abdomen. Molly's fate was even more nightmarish. She was tied up, brutally assaulted, and stabbed to death, her hands bound and her neck constricted by a rope. Her body was left lying face down in the shelter. Geoff's lifeless body was found nearby, stripped of his clothes, with only a white shirt clutched in his hand. Later that day, 2 hikers, Cindy and Brian Bowen, arrived at the shelter and made the grim discovery. Their peaceful plans to camp at the shelter were shattered by the sight of blood and the lifeless bodies of Molly and Geoff. Shocked, they immediately contacted authorities. As investigators arrived, they began piecing together the crime scene and launched a manhunt for the killer. The Bowens had reported seeing a suspicious man nearby, and the trail of evidence began to narrow. On September 21st, 1990, a breakthrough came when 2 hikers spotted a man wearing Geoff's backpack and boots. The man, identified as Paul David Cruz, was apprehended by the National Park Service. Cruz was no ordinary hiker. He was an ex-Marine with a violent history and an outstanding warrant for a murder in Florida. In his possession, authorities found the murder weapons and other personal belongings of Molly and Geoff, tying him directly to the crime. DNA evidence later confirmed his involvement, and Cruz was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Though initially sentenced to death, his sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole in 2006. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie on June 28, 1914, marked a pivotal moment in world history. The couple's final photograph, taken just before their assassination, captures an eerie moment of calm before a chain of events that would drastically alter global politics and warfare. The killing, orchestrated by a group of Bosnian Serb revolutionaries, served as the catalyst for World War I. While the assassination was a tragic personal loss, its impact went far beyond. Ferdinand's death led to the July Crisis, which triggered Austria-Hungary's declaration of war on Serbia. This escalated into a global conflict due to a complex network of alliances, ultimately resulting in World War I. The war saw over 20 million casualties, reshaping national borders and creating unresolved tensions that contributed to World War II. In that war, an estimated 70 to 85 million people perished, and the conflict led to the development of nuclear weapons, which pushed the world into the Cold War. The photograph of Ferdinand and Sophie, seen in retrospect, becomes much more than just a historical image. It symbolizes the last moments before the world plunged into a new era of unprecedented violence, which shaped the 20th century and still impacts modern history. Gary Box's story is one of both immense heroism and heartbreaking uncertainty. A firefighter in Brooklyn, Gary was just 37 years old when the September 11, 2001 attacks happened, throwing him into one of the most devastating events in modern history. The chaos of that day made it difficult for families to know exactly what had happened to their loved ones, and for Gary's father, Judson Box, the uncertainty was a deep wound that lasted for years. His son's body was never found, and he didn't have a final phone call or last message to hold on to. Gary left behind his wife and 2 children, but no clear answers about his last moments. It wasn't until 8 years later, in 2009, that the family began to unravel part of the mystery. Gary's sister, Christine, visited the 9/11 Tribute Center, and while she was there, an employee asked if she was searching for anyone in particular. When Christine mentioned Gary, the employee brought up a photo of a firefighter in the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, captioned as Gary Box. However, it soon became clear that the firefighter in the photo wasn't Gary, but a colleague, Brian Belcher, who had also died in the attacks. While this discovery was bittersweet, it reignited the family's search for some trace of Gary's final moments. Determined to find out more, Judson Box began scouring the photo archives of the National 9/11 Museum and the memorial's website, where the public had uploaded images from that day. Night after night, he searched tirelessly, hoping to find anything that would provide closure. One particularly exhausting night, After spending more than 5 hours looking through photos, Judson went to bed with no answers, feeling emotionally drained. But the next morning, something remarkable happened. As Judson was having breakfast, his wife Helen called him into the living room with a sense of urgency. She had found a photo, a firefighter running through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, passing by cars stuck in traffic, heading toward the burning towers. This time it was unmistakably Gary. For Judson, this discovery felt like a small but significant piece of his son's story had been returned to him. The search didn't end there. Determined to learn more about that image, Judson reached out to the National 9/11 Museum and Memorial to track down the person who had taken the photo. Months later, he was able to make contact with Erik Troelsen, a Danish businessman who had taken the picture while driving through the tunnel on the morning of September 11. Troelsen had been on his way to a meeting, completely unaware of the catastrophe unfolding above him. He recalled a haunting moment when a girl in the car ahead of him began crying, and they turned on the radio to hear the news of the attacks. As traffic in the tunnel came to a standstill, fire trucks began racing past, heading toward the towers. One vehicle, its tires blown out, caused a traffic jam that blocked the larger trucks. As the minutes ticked by, the firefighters, including Gary, abandoned their trucks and started running past the cars, rushing on foot toward the towers to help in any way they could. For Judson, that photo was a gift, a glimpse into his son's heroic last moments as he ran toward danger, determined to save lives. It gave the family something they had been missing for so long, a fragment of Gary's final day, an image of him in action, selflessly doing his duty. Although Gary's body was never found, the discovery of this photo helped bring some solace to his family, allowing them to see him one last time as the brave firefighter he had always been. This incident at the New Delhi Zoo highlights a tragic and dangerous encounter between a human and a tiger. A 20-year-old man, reportedly seeking to get a closer look at the tiger exhibit, managed to breach multiple barriers before falling 18 feet into the moat surrounding the tiger's enclosure. The tiger, curious about the commotion, approached the man. Unfortunately, the circumstances that followed were horrific, leading to the man's death. Zookeepers faced a significant challenge in safely coaxing the tiger back into its cage, which took a couple of hours. Emma Brown's story is a chilling and heartbreaking reminder of the darkness that can sometimes emerge in even the most seemingly ordinary lives. At just 12 years old, Emma was like many girls her age, attending school at Peaster Elementary and living with her father, Daniel, in the quiet town of Poolville, Texas. Her family life appeared normal on the surface. Emma had recently gone to a father-daughter dance with Daniel, and their home was filled with the comfort and familiarity of rural life. But behind the scenes, something far more troubling was brewing in Emma's world. On September 20th, 2022, just hours after what seemed like a peaceful moment between father and daughter, Emma's life took a dark and violent turn. In a shocking act, she shot her 38-year-old father in the abdomen and then turned the gun on herself, a decision that would end her life 2 days later in the hospital. The tragedy left their small Texas community reeling, but as more details emerged, the story became even more disturbing. Authorities soon discovered that this was not a spontaneous act of violence. Emma had been part of a premeditated murder plot, a pact she had formed with another 12-year-old girl from Lufkin, Texas, over 200 miles away. Together, the two girls had planned to kill their entire families and pets before running away. Although Emma followed through with the plot, the exact role of her accomplice remains murky. Due to Texas laws protecting minors, the other girl's identity remains confidential, but she was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. The case finally reached a resolution on March 14, 2023. Emma's access to firearms played a critical role in the tragic events of that night. Her father, Daniel, held an FFL license, which allowed him to legally store and sell firearms from their home. Growing up around guns was a normal part of Emma's life, and her familiarity with them may have made the horrific act more possible. But what drove her to such an extreme decision remains unclear. Investigators were left with more questions than answers, especially when they learned that after the killings, Emma had planned to drive 230 miles to pick up her boyfriend and then flee to Georgia. On the night of the shooting, Emma left her father gravely injured inside their home, walking a few hundred yards down the driveway before ending her own life. Her body was found on a dirt road, the handgun she used still beneath her. Daniel, despite his life-threatening injuries, was later released from the hospital and is expected to make a full recovery. His survival, though a relief to many, was bittersweet as it came at the cost of his daughter's life. Emma's parents had no idea about the other girl's involvement until after the fact. Rosario Charo Endrinal's life was a story of promise, pain, and tragic loss. Born in 1954, she was once full of potential, known for her intelligence, charm, and her fluency in multiple languages. For a time, Charo lived a life that seemed secure, working for the Spanish retail giant El Corte Inglés, a prestigious position that reflected her talents. She had a family, a husband named Luis and a daughter, Santal. But despite this seemingly stable life, her world began to unravel in the mid-1990s. The turning point came when Charo left her family for a Frenchman named Jean. This decision led her down a path that spiraled out of control. After separating from Luis and leaving her stable life behind, Charo began using cocaine, an addiction that would have devastating consequences. As her drug habit grew, Charo lost her job and Jean abandoned her, leaving her with nothing. By the end of this painful journey, she found herself homeless in Barcelona. For years, Charo lived on the streets of the city, a harsh reality far removed from the life she had once known. She often sought shelter in a CaixaBank ATM vestibule located in the affluent Sarriá Sant Gervasi neighborhood. This space, though offering some protection from the elements, made her a target for cruelty. Other homeless individuals and drunken passers-by harassed and abused her regularly. She was vulnerable, left to face the daily dangers of life on the street alone. The most horrific of these encounters came in the early hours of December 16, 2005. On that night, 18-year-olds Ricard Pinilla and Oriol Plana came across Charo sleeping in the ATM vestibule. What began as verbal torment quickly escalated into physical abuse. They hurled insults at her, kicked her, and threw objects at her, but when Charo managed to lock them outside, she thought she had escaped the worst of the attack. Unfortunately, it wasn't over. Hours later, 16-year-old Juan Jose joined Ricard and Oriol, and the trio returned to the ATM booth. Pretending to need access to the ATM, they convinced Charo to let them back inside. Once inside, the situation turned deadly. Ricard and Juan Jose poured industrial paint thinner over Charo, while Oriol watched, and then they set her on fire with a cigarette. The flames engulfed her body, leaving her with burns that covered 70% of her body. Despite fighting for her life for the next 28 hours, Charo eventually succumbed to her injuries. The brutality of the attack was captured on the bank's security cameras, a piece of evidence that would spark widespread outrage across Spain. The public was horrified by the senseless violence and the vulnerability of Charo, who had already suffered so much. The attackers were quickly arrested and brought to trial. Ricard and Oriol were sentenced to 17 years in prison for their roles in Charo's death, while Juan Jose, who was a minor at the time, received 8 years in juvenile detention and an additional 5 years of supervised release. Though justice was served in some form, the consequences for Charo's family were devastating. Her daughter, Santal, spoke openly about the pain of her mother's death, sharing that she had long held out hope for reconciliation. She believed that one day her mother might turn her life around, and Charo's violent death had robbed them of that possibility. The early release of Ricard, who served just 11 years of his 17-year sentence, only deepened the wound for Santal and others who felt that the attackers hadn't fully paid for their crime. Ricard, upon his release in 2016, expressed remorse for his actions, attributing them to his insecurity and low self-esteem. However, for many, these words did little to heal the scars left by Charo's death. On August 1, 1943, a crowd gathered at Lambert St. Louis Airport to witness the first public demonstration of the Waco CG-4 glider, an aircraft designed by William P. Robertson. Excitement filled the air as local dignitaries, including Mayor William Becker, Robertson, and several influential figures from St. Louis, boarded the glider. This photograph was taken just before the flight, capturing what seemed like a moment of triumph. However, disaster struck almost immediately after the towing cable was released. The glider's right wing broke off, sending it plunging from a height of 1,500 feet. All 10 passengers on board were killed instantly in the tragic crash. In a chilling twist, only days before the demonstration, Mayor Becker had joked with a reporter, saying, "Gentlemen, you can die only once, and we all must die sometime." His words would prove hauntingly prophetic. Next is the story of Nirupama Prajapati. Nirupama was on a picnic with friends in the Sundargarh district near Kanakund, a popular location for sightseeing and outdoor activities. While enjoying the picturesque surroundings, Nirupama ventured too close to the rocky edge of the IB River to capture a selfie. Tragedy struck when a man climbing nearby also lost his footing and accidentally knocked Nirupama into the river. Despite her attempts to regain balance and briefly holding on, the force of the rapids overwhelmed her. Nirupama disappeared under the water, and her lifeless body was found the following day, lodged in a stone crevice about a quarter-mile downstream from where she had fallen. It took rescuers, including the fire department and her family, 22 hours of searching to recover her remains. Nirupama's untimely death highlights a troubling trend of selfie-related fatalities in India and around the world. A 2018 study reported 259 selfie deaths in 137 incidents between October 2011 and November 2017. The majority of the victims were young, with an average age of 23, and males accounted for 3 times as many deaths as females. India topped the list of countries with the highest number of selfie deaths, followed by Russia, the US, and Pakistan. Ryan Dunn, an American stunt performer, actor, comedian, and well-known star of the MTV series Jackass, posted a photo on his Twitter account on June 20, 2011. The image showed Dunn, along with Zachary Hartwell and another friend, drinking at a bar. Just a few hours later, tragedy struck. Dunn and Hartwell, a production assistant on Jackass No. 2, were driving back from the Barnaby's Westchester bar when the car veered off the road, crashed into a tree, and erupted in flames. Both Dunn, aged 34, and Hartwell, aged 29, were killed instantly. It was later confirmed that Dunn had been driving, and his blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limit. Further investigation revealed that Dunn had been speeding, traveling between 132 and 140 miles per hour in a 55 miles per hour zone, contributing to the fatal crash. 19-year-old Gavin Zimmerman was enjoying a vacation with friends at Cape Solander when tragedy struck. During the trip, Gavin lost his life after falling into the ocean and being unable to return to shore. Nearly a year after the accident, his grieving family traveled to the popular tourist spot to visit the place where their son had tragically died. What makes this story especially heartbreaking is that, just before the fatal fall, Gavin had taken a photo of himself standing near the cliff that would soon claim his life. In the image, he appeared happy and content, with no sign of the impending danger. According to his father, when he first saw the photo, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Gavin appeared to be standing safely away from the edge, and everything seemed fine. Gavin had sent the photo to his father, who replied almost immediately. However, Gavin never responded. His father thought nothing of it at the time, assuming his son was busy, and messaged again, telling Gavin he loved him and that they would catch up later. Investigators believe that, after sending the photo, Gavin attempted to take another picture of himself in front of the ocean, but lost his balance and fell from the cliff. After a 30-minute search, his friends found him unconscious in the water. Lifeguards attempted CPR, but it was too late. His devastated parents were informed of the tragedy the next day. In February 2017, best friends Abby Williams and Libby German set out for what should have been a peaceful hike in Indiana. This unsettling photo of Abby was taken just moments before the 2 girls were brutally murdered. What makes this image even more disturbing is that in the background, you can see their killer lurking. It appears the man had been stalking the girls for a while, and in a chilling turn of events, the girls managed to capture images of him on Libby's phone, likely because they felt they were being followed. In this final photo of Abby, her murderer is visible, standing behind her. The man responsible for their deaths has never been caught. Though there is a reward for any information leading to his identification, justice remains elusive. Jennifer Strange's story is one of a tragic attempt to win a gift for her children that ended in a devastating loss. On January 12, 2007, the 28-year-old mother of three entered a radio contest called Hold Your Wii for a Wii, hosted by KDND's morning show in California. The contest promised a highly sought-after Nintendo Wii gaming console to the contestant who could drink the most water without urinating. Jennifer joined, hoping to secure the prize for her kids. At 6:45 a.m., the competition kicked off with around 17 to 20 participants gathered at the radio station. Each contestant was given 240 milliliters of water to drink every 15 minutes, and as time passed, the amount of water increased. Although it seemed like a fun, light-hearted challenge, danger loomed behind this reckless competition. During the broadcast, a nurse even called the station, warning the DJs about the serious health risks of consuming excessive water in a short time. However, the station's staff dismissed her concerns, choosing instead to press on with the event. After about 3 hours of participation and consuming a staggering 7.6 liters of water, Jennifer finished second in the contest. Her prize was a pair of tickets to a Justin Timberlake concert, not the Wii she had hoped for, but it came at an immeasurable cost. Before leaving the station, Jennifer reported feeling unwell, complaining specifically about a severe headache. Rather than taking her condition seriously, the DJs made jokes about her appearance, laughing that her swollen stomach made her look pregnant. Jennifer, trying to brush it off, laughed along and left for home. On her drive home, the pain persisted. She called a coworker, crying about the severe headache that had worsened. Tragically, this would be her last conversation. Jennifer was found dead in her Rancho Cordova home just hours later. The autopsy revealed that she had died from hyponatremia, or water intoxication. Her body's sodium levels had become dangerously imbalanced due to the excessive water intake, causing her cells to swell. This swelling ultimately impacted her brain, leading to seizures, respiratory failure, and death. Jennifer's death shocked the public, as what seemed like a harmless game turned into a fatal ordeal. Her family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against KDND, accusing the station of gross negligence. The court sided with Jennifer's family, awarding them $16.5 million in damages on October 29, 2009. In April 2014, 32-year-old Courtney Ann Sanford was driving to work in High Point, North Carolina, when she tragically lost her life in a car accident. Like many people, Courtney often posted updates and selfies on her social media. During her drive, Pharrell Williams' popular song Happy came on the radio, and feeling uplifted by the music, she was compelled to post about it. At 8:33 a.m., Courtney made a Facebook post that read, "The happy song makes me happy." Just 1 minute later, at 8:34 a.m., police received a call about a head-on crash. Courtney's car had veered across the median and collided with a truck, killing her instantly. In late June 2018, the world was captivated by the dramatic story of 12 young boys and their football coach who had become trapped in the intricate Tam Luang cave system in Thailand. After a sudden storm caused the cave's passageways to flood, they were left with no way to escape. A complex, high-risk rescue operation was launched, where divers had to navigate through the dark, flooded caverns. Each boy was heavily sedated, fitted with a full-face breathing mask, and strapped to a rescue diver who would guide them through the submerged sections using dive leans. One of the brave divers involved in the mission was Saman Kunan. This photograph shows him preparing for the rescue operation. Tragically, it would be his last. While transferring oxygen tanks to the boys, Kunan experienced difficulties and ran out of air. He lost consciousness and passed away in one of the cave's passageways. Saman Kunan died a hero, and between July 8th and 10, all 12 boys and their coach were successfully rescued, thanks in large part to the courage and sacrifice of people like him. Casey Rivara. On May 18, 2023, at around 8:15 p.m., a 41-year-old man named Casey Rivara lost his life in a tragic accident after performing an act of kindness. While driving his children home from swim practice, Rivara noticed a mother duck and her ducklings struggling to cross a busy intersection at Park Drive and Stanford Ranch Boulevard in Rocklin, California. Moved by compassion, Casey parked his car and got out to help the ducks cross safely. His good deed was met with applause from onlookers, including 12-year-old William Wimsatt, who captured the moment on his phone. However, tragedy struck when Casey was returning to his car. A vehicle driven by a 17-year-old girl suddenly hit him. William recalled hearing the impact and seeing Casey's body thrown across the intersection. Casey's shoes and sock landed in front of their car. Casey's two children, ages 11 and 6, were in the car and witnessed the accident. William's mother, who had earlier been grateful for Casey's actions, comforted the children in the aftermath of the horrific event. In the days following the incident, another 12-year-old witness returned to the scene with flowers and rubber ducks to honor Casey. The 17-year-old driver involved in the collision stayed at the scene and cooperated with the police investigation. As of now, she faces no charges related to the tragic accident. José Valenzuela. The story of José Valenzuela is told through the final photo taken just before a tragic accident. José, a dedicated contractor, was repairing a damaged sewer line near the intersection of Voorhees and 3rd Streets in Holdenville, Oklahoma on April 10, 2023. Valenzuela, who moved to Oklahoma in 1997 and had been living in Holdenville for 15 years, worked for the Dawson Does It Plumbing Company. On that fateful day, as he and other contractors were replacing a broken sewer line, the trench in which they were working suddenly collapsed, burying Valenzuela under 12 feet of dirt and debris. Despite emergency crews' efforts, including specialized trench and excavation rescue teams from nearby fire departments, the complexity of the situation, involving active gas pipelines and water mains, hindered their ability to safely reach him. For 9 agonizing hours, the teams worked to free him, but as Chief Kyle Lenning of the Holdenville Police Department noted, the operation shifted from a rescue to a recovery effort. Valenzuela's body was finally recovered at 11:20 p.m., ending a heartbreaking ordeal. The submarine murder. In August 2017, freelance journalist Kim Wall set out to interview Danish inventor Peter Madsen aboard his homemade submarine. What began as a professional opportunity quickly turned into a horrific crime. This photo, showing Kim just before embarking on the submarine, captures her in what should have been a routine moment of her journalistic career. Tragically, once inside the vessel, Madsen murdered her and gruesomely dismembered her body. Investigations revealed chilling details about Madsen's obsession with violent acts. He had been watching disturbing videos of women being tortured and killed, with footage of beheadings found on his computer. These details suggest that his actions were premeditated and driven by his dark fascination with murder. Kim Wall, a talented journalist with a bright future, fell victim to his monstrous impulses, and this photo serves as a haunting reminder of the danger that awaited her on that fateful trip.